Hello, my name is Rachel Moore, and for my cultural competency practice presentation, I have chosen to do Asian American. Before this assignment, and even before this class, I really didn't see, I saw Asians as a minority, but not so much as racial discrimination until I did a little bit more research for this project. And with this class, overall, with the different minority groups, it has definitely shown a light on some things that I may have overlooked or have been sheltered from due to I'm a white Caucasian female. And there was also some things with this class that I necessarily didn't agree with, but I also didn't necessarily disagree with. And so I chose to do my project on Asian American because of the standpoint that you don't hear much from the Asian community when it comes to racial discrimination or difference in cultural, and also in the aspect of them being a minority group but not hearing so much about them in the news when it comes to police officers or businesses or just as a whole, you know, that you don't hear from them protesting and also marching too much. So it's definitely a minority group that I believe is identified, and I have definitely learned from this assignment on possibly the reason why and how it pertains to their culture. So a little bit of back history. So we'll start with the Chinese. Asian Americans aren't just the Chinese, and we'll go into that a little bit later. But a little history lesson. In the 1840s was when we saw the migration of the Asian culture coming over to America, and that was due to the shortage of African slaves, and it was just to supplement that for, you know, the plantation owners and stuff. In the 1850s, then you saw the gold rush in California. So they particularly worked with the gold mines, the garment industry, factories, and agricultural jobs. Now, most of the Chinese and the Asians that came over to America, they came over and their main goal was to either send money back home to their families or to pay off the debt to the people that helped them get over here, or both. Now there was an Exclusion Act in the 1882 when there was an influx of the Asian community coming over and limiting the amount of jobs for those that were already established here in America. So it caused a lot of tension. So in 1882, the government passed a law, specifically in San Francisco area, California, where they limited the amount of immigration from China, and they only allowed about 15 Asians to come over in per ship. And this caused a lot of tension. There's also a couple cultural things. So we'll gear from the Chinese to the Japanese as an example of a whole aspect. So in World War II, we were not only in war with Germany, but we were also at war with Japan. So after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, they created these camps for those that were descendants of Japan to reduce espionage within that area. So it was kind of a very unethical way of doing things, and it definitely caused a lot of like racial tension. And then also with that, we also see Chinatown. So like if you were to go to like LA, you have Chinatown, you have Koreatown. These communities weren't built because they naturally migrated that way. They built because of the stipulation of not really working together with the majority, which is white, group. They didn't really want to cross blend or anything. So the Chinatown was kind of a way for them to, in the Asian culture, to come together and have businesses and kind of thrive as their own community. So that way they didn't have to deal with the racial discrimination. So, Cambodia, China, India, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Pakistan, the Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, and Somalia. And in the 2010 U.S. Census, estimated there are 14.7 million Asians in the United States. About 4.8% of the estimated 350 million American population. The three largest Asian groups were Chinese, Filipinos, and Asian Indians. So when we talk about Asian Americans, we're not just talking about like China, Philippines, or Indians, but we're also talking about a wide variety of different countries. So with them being a minority group, they have according to Mary Nee from an article that she published with MIT, there's a major difference between the Asian culture and other minority groups. So they tend to not really make such big waves when it comes to discrimination. They also turn the other way when something is offensive. They kind of just let it go. And with the assumption that, they look a certain way, and to other people it's really hard to tell which part, even if it's from China, which part of China, and do they speak the language or do they not speak the language. And from the inside, these stereotypes and myths can become true within themselves because that's what they hear. So what has changed? For me at work, I work with a lot of Filipinos, and that's just because we have like a little migration. For me, I've gotten along with all of them, but to really understand the aspect of just listening to their different stories of why they migrated to America and what is the big difference. I work with one lady, she had a family who owned pig farms, and she came to America, and she's really done well for herself. In the mental health industry, when it comes to the Asian population, they tend to keep to themselves, not really seek out help. And because of the aspect that they try to keep a pristine image when it comes to the outside, that they tend not to seek treatment for like anxiety, depression, stress, PTSD, or anything pertaining to that. So a way to work with Asian clients is to overcome the language barrier. So understanding which region they come from and what language they work with. So if you do need to hire an interpreter or communicate with an interpreter, you're communicating with a proper interpreter and not just assuming what language they speak, and if they actually have a language barrier. Also being sensitive to their cultural beliefs and their traditions. Some Asian cultures and families still firmly believe in like healers and medicine, men or women, and they do like a lot of like holistic way of healing. And so just being aware of that cultural difference, so that way we can work together with probably the healer and then also with us to better treat them. And also treat the family as well as a unit and not just the individual themselves. And then just when taking caution with psychotropic medication and starting at a lower dose. With acute, in most cases, you see Asian Americans in acute care or crisis situations. So, and not to create a big stigma on the family within the community itself. And also foreseeing future needs of the client, so that way we can prevent them from going to hospitals or from being in a crisis situation. And these are just a few of my references. I want to thank you for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful night. Bye-bye.